Hey folks, this is Kalani. One of the major features that a lot of players are looking forward to in patch 9.2 is the ability to equip 2 legendary items or effects. We know there are going to be restrictions on this right from the get-go. We can only equip our Covenant legendary alongside one other legendary effect, but until now this feature had been absent from the PTR. Well, the latest build finally introduced the 2 legendary feature, so let's break it down, see exactly how it's going to work and what you'll have to do when the patch goes live. First things first, if you have a Covenant legendary right now and a few other legendaries in your bag, that actually is not enough to equip 2 legendaries. You can't just slap on the ones you have. You're going to need to earn a new legendary, a legendary belt to be specific. The Clasp of Unity is something you can earn from working with the Enlightened Brokers in Zereth Mortis. The weird part here is that we actually don't fully know how you get the belt right now. That's available on the PTR for testing. You can buy it from a testing vendor for a couple hundred gold and tinker about with it. It is also available from the Enlightened faction vendor in Zereth Mortis, but it costs a currency that we can't obtain right now, Cosmic Flux. I'll talk a bit about this later in the video. So the only way to test it is from buying it from a temporary NPC, which obviously doesn't reflect how we will earn it when the patch goes live. The other oddity here is that when the build was first enabled, the belt had a reputation requirement. You needed to be revered with the Enlightened faction to use it. That requirement was later removed to actually allow players to test a legendary because, you know, nobody on the PTR is going to get revered with the Enlightened, but the dev team has said that the plan is for this belt to have a reputation requirement with that same faction. We don't know if that's going to be revered or honored or maybe even friendly, but we do know that it's supposed to be relatively early on in your Zereth Mortis adventures, or at least that was the original plan. You could earn this legendary belt and then later on you would have the option to create something else. The main reason this belt is going to be so useful and so powerful is because you can equip it alongside any other crafted legendary in Shadowlands. That's where the whole equip 2 legendaries or double legendaries things come from. But the other factor is that this legendary will adapt to your Covenant choice. The legendary effect itself just copies your Covenant legendary that you earned and could craft in 9.1, but this legendary is a little bit more special. It will change effects if you change your Covenant. So if you start as part of the Night Fae Covenant, your legendary belt will give you the Night Fae legendary effect. If you then swap over to Kyrian, the belt will swap its effects to the Kyrian legendary, so it will always remain relevant and useful to you even if you swap Covenants 10 times a day. That means you don't have to craft each of the Covenant legendaries to get the full benefit from swapping to those Covenants, which also means this legendary will make Covenant swapping less annoying and more efficient overall. I think it's a little disappointing that we don't get to equip 2 legendary effects that we want out of the entire pool, because I think that would give us way more options to play around with and build some really crazy powerful setups, but at least we're getting some flexibility built into it. Now maybe you're thinking, but Kalani, I don't want a belt. I want this second legendary to be a ring or a necklace or some other slot. Well, I have good news for you. You can do that. The actual legendary effect, both the ability for it to be equipped as a second legendary and then the bonus for it swapping to whatever your currently active Covenant ability is, those effects are available as a rune carving memory that you can take to the rune carver, and then you can create a legendary as you normally would with this new powerful effect, and you can equip it alongside something else. It can go on any slot of your choosing, but you would then need the extra Soul Ash and Soul Cinders to make a legendary from scratch, and of course you need to buy the appropriate base items. To learn that memory, we need to take another look at the new reputation vendor coming in 9.2. The Memory of Unity can be purchased from the Enlightened Quartermaster after you've reached Revered with this new faction. That's going to take a little bit of time and quite a bit of grinding in the new zone. I think most people who are trying to figure this out pit it somewhere between 3 and 4 weeks, so potentially up to a month of grinding in Zereth Mortis before you're able to equip 2 legendaries. But then we have this new currency that I briefly mentioned earlier, Cosmic Flux. This is used to both purchase the belt and the memory on the PTR right now. Again, we're not 100% sure how the belt is going to work, but it's safe to say that the memory is more or less implemented correctly. So all you would need to do is farm up a bit of Cosmic Flux, get to Revered with the rep, and then you can make the second legendary on any slot or piece of gear you want. It's also worth mentioning that general legendary effects that work for multiple classes have always been unlocked for your entire account. They're typically not very useful, so it hasn't really mattered so far in Shadowlands, but this is a general use legendary. It's the exact same thing for every class, no matter what, so it should unlock across your entire account. If you get this memory once, all of your ults should be able to make their second legendary right away, which will be fantastic. Who knows, the way in which you acquire the legendary belt could even have some account-wide unlock status too, which would be even better. As for how you can get your hands on some of this cosmic flux, we don't have solid answers right now, but we have a pretty good idea. While the currency is in the PTR game files, I don't think there are actually any sources of it just yet, but from when the currency was talked about earlier on in 9.2's development, I believe it was compared to other endgame currencies that we've seen in the past, things like Echoes of Ny'alotha from the end of Battle for Azeroth, and Awakening Essence from Legion. The planned sources were Mythic Plus dungeons, raid bosses taking part in PvP, Torghast, the Tower of the Damned, and World Quest. We know there is a new weekly quest in Zereth Mortis, so that might be included as well. Basically, if you're doing anything at endgame in this patch, you should be earning Cosmic Flux. This currency will also be used to upgrade legendary items to the new maximum rank and item level, as well as allowing you to create your very own tier gear for the patch, but we'll talk more about that in a future video when that feature is enabled for testing. So we know when we'll get the Runecarver's memory, right? Revered with the Enlightened. That makes sense. So if we are supposed to get the belt before we can get the memory, that would either have to be in a story segment that would take place before we're able to get to Revered, or if it's still tied to the Enlightened faction and just a rep reward, it would have to be accessible at Honored or earlier. There's also the confusing part where the belt costs 5 times more Cosmic Flux than the Runecarver memory, but hopefully that's just a temporary value for the PTR. Does it make much sense for a less flexible item to be more expensive than the more flexible item? And depending on when you can get your hands on that belt, it might just be worth waiting for the memory unlock to save yourself 2,000 Cosmic Flux. That stuff's going to be very important after all if you want to make your own tier gear. But that's everything we know about how double legendaries are going to work in patch 9.2. What do you think from what you've seen so far? How do you feel about double legendaries being locked behind a rep grind in 9.2? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who subscribed on Twitch. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.